It started on a quiet street in Oak Haven, Alabama, one of those sleepy neighborhoods where the mailboxes lean, the grass grows uneven, and everybody thinks they know who belongs and who doesn't. That morning, the air was heavy with silence, the kind that almost feels staged, like the whole block was waiting for something to crack. A black SUV rolled down Cedar Lane windows, tinted speed, steady, never breaking a single rule. But to Officer Daniel Crowder sitting in his cruiser, sipping lukewarm coffee, that SUV didn't look like it belonged. He didn't care that the driver was obeying every traffic law in the book. What he saw was a black man in a suit behind the wheel of a federal vehicle. And in his world, that meant suspicion. Dispatch had put out a vague alert earlier: black SUV, maybe tied to a break-in, no plate confirmed. That was enough for Crowder. He tightened his jaw, shifted the car into gear, and slid in behind the SUV. Inside, the man driving glanced once in the mirror, calm as if he'd been expecting this moment all along. His name was Anthony Cole. Most of the world didn't know his face, but if you worked in Washington, you knew his title: Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He had spent a lifetime walking sharper, speaking calmer, moving straighter, just to be seen as equal, and even then, moments like this always found him. Crowder flipped on the lights. No siren, just the red-blue flash bouncing across the quiet street. The SUV eased over smooth, respectful. Crowder parked behind, adjusted his belt, and stepped out. Black boots on asphalt. He tapped the window with two fingers. License and registration. Anthony looked at him over dark sunglasses, voice steady. "Officer, may I ask what the stop is?" For Crowder narrowed his eyes. "Do you have ID or not?" "I do," Anthony said slowly, "but it may not show in your system. The vehicle is federally registered." Crowder smirked, unsnapping his holster strap hand, hovering near the Glock. "Yeah. And who exactly are you supposed to be?" Anthony reached calmly into his jacket, his movements deliberate, almost too slow. "I'm reaching for my credentials. My name is Anthony Cole, Director of the FBI." Crowder let the words hang like smoke. Then with a sneer, "Nice story." Across the street, a barista working a coffee cart froze. Something in her gut told her to pull out her phone and hit record. The little red light blinked to life. Anthony didn't raise his voice. "Officer, you're making a mistake. You're being recorded from your dash cam and from at least one other angle. Think carefully." Crowder's face flushed. He hated the tone, hated the calm, hated the fact that this man wasn't afraid. With one sharp motion, he pulled his gun barrel, aimed dead at the windshield. Anthony didn't flinch. Instead, he pressed a hidden switch beneath the steering column. No sound, no alert, but 5 blocks away, a team of plainclothes agents felt their phones vibrate. A panic code from the director. They'd never seen it triggered before. Crowder barked out of the vehicle, "Hands where I can see them." Anthony just looked at him steady. "If you fire that weapon, you will answer for every second that follows." Before Crowder could react, a voice cut through the tension. "Officer, step away from the vehicle." He spun around, gun still raised. A man in tactical gear stood with a badge in one hand, earpiece tucked in. Behind him, a black Suburban rolled to a stop. "This is a secure federal scene. Lower your weapon." Crowder's world started spinning. The man in the SUV stepped out tall, calm, his suit sharp against the Alabama sun. "You just aimed a loaded weapon at a federal official." Anthony said, his voice low but cutting. "On camera, in front of witnesses." Phones were up everywhere now. A jogger stopped mid-stride. A man with his bead just stared, and then it happened. The agents moved in, clipped the Glock from Crowder's holster, snapped handcuffs around his wrists. The gasp from the crowd sounded almost rehearsed. The girl live streaming whispered, "Oh my God, they just cuffed the cop." For years, Crowder had been praised for his instincts. That word, always instincts. A gift, they called it. A nose for trouble. But everyone knew, even if they didn't say it, what trouble usually looked like. His file was littered with complaints that vanished into drawers: a teacher forced to the ground, a mother cuffed in front of her child, a veteran humiliated in uniform. All brushed aside as coincidence. But not this time. This time, the whole country had a front row seat. By noon, the video had hit 1 million views. Headlines screamed, "Local cop arrested for pointing gun at FBI director." Crowder sat in a holding cell staring at the wall, whispering, "I didn't mean to," over and over. Intent didn't matter anymore. The footage spoke louder than anything. Anthony Cole didn't storm the cameras. He chose PBS over cable giants, sat in a quiet studio, and said simply, "Justice isn't about spectacle. It's about integrity. The moment we turn it into theater, we lose it." But the story refused to stay small. The Senate Judiciary Committee summoned him. Under oath in front of the nation, Anthony looked the senators in the eye. "What happened to me on Cedar Lane wasn't unique. The only unusual thing was the badge in my pocket. I'm not asking why I was treated badly as director. I'm asking why ordinary people are treated worse." One senator asked, "Isn't it fair to say the officer didn't know who you were?" Anthony didn't blink. "That's the point. I'm not asking to be treated better because of my title. I'm asking why people without titles are treated worse." The words dropped like a gavel. Outside crowds erupted, some cheering, some furious. Inside the courthouse, 3 people watched from the gallery: the teacher, the veteran, the mother. Their old complaints, once buried, were now being read aloud in court. They weren't forgotten anymore. When the trial of Officer Crowder began, it wasn't just about one traffic stop. It was about a pattern, a quiet normalization of fear turned into force. The prosecution opened with dash cam footage from years past. Crowder shouting at drivers of color, hand always near his gun escalation without cause. One by one, the stories piled up. And then Anthony himself took the stand. No theatrics, no raised voice, just the truth. Crowder didn't act alone, he said. Yes, he pulled the trigger on judgment, but the gun was loaded by a system that rewarded fear over service. The defense tried to paint it as a misunderstanding. "You're a powerful man," the lawyer argued. "Doesn't that make officers nervous?" Anthony leaned forward. "You think he pointed a gun at me because I was powerful? No. He did it because I was unknown to him, and because my face, my skin became the threat before anything else." Silence wrapped the courtroom. You could hear people breathing. When the verdict came guilty on all counts, the courthouse shook. Outside, it wasn't Anthony at the microphone. It was Latasha Freeman, the mother once cuffed in front of her child. She said, "We're not here because a black man had power. We're here because he used it to protect those of us who didn't." That line became the heartbeat of the story. But the real change came quietly. In Oak Haven, the police chief resigned, admitting he had looked the other way. The town council formed its first civilian review board. In Washington, the DOJ announced a federal investigation into the department. And across the country, cities started questioning how many other instincts looked exactly like Crowder's. One night, weeks later, Anthony sat in his office in D.C. A photo of a teenage boy lay on his desk. Not a relative, not famous. Just a kid whose face had once been pressed against a hood, hands cuffed, eyes wide with fear. That boy was the reason he joined the bureau, the reason he stayed. His aide stepped in. "Director of the president's office is on the line. They want to know what you want to do next." Anthony stared out the window at the Capitol dome. "Tell them I'm not coming to celebrate. I'm coming to remind them justice doesn't end with a verdict. It starts with one." And somewhere in Oak Haven, a young rookie officer pulled over a car for speeding. Inside was a black father and his daughter. The officer didn't shout, didn't hover with his hand on his gun. He simply said, "Good evening. You were going a little fast back there. Can I see your license and registration?" The father nodded, stunned at the respect. The little girl whispered, "Daddy." He didn't yell. And the father, staring straight ahead, whispered back, "I know." Maybe, just maybe, something had shifted. But here's the question for you. Was this justice or just one crack in a wall that still stands tall? If even the FBI director can be treated like a suspect, what does that say about everyone else? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me if you think real change is happening, or if this was just another headline waiting to fade. And if you believe stories like this need to be told until they're no longer surprising hit like share this with a friend and subscribe because the next time justice knocks, we want to be the ones holding the door open.